The party that believes we are the leader on the world stage, dead. The party that believes in free markets and free trade, dead. That party will never come back.
I'm John Pienaar, coming to you live from Washington, D.C. Now, I'm joined by a former Republican congressman. It is Joe Walsh, who campaigned hard, not for Donald Trump, for Kamala Harris. Welcome to you, Joe.
Good to be with you, my friend.
You're very, very welcome. Tell me, look, on reflection, Joe, looking at that result, that wipeout for the Democrats, did Republicans like you, as well as Democrats who campaigned to beat Donald Trump, do you think maybe you read the American people wrongly, Joe? Maybe it is suggested, maybe they weren't misled by Donald Trump. They wanted to believe Trump's message against liberals and against leftists and against migrants. Did you get the mood wrong?
Well, I don't think we got the mood wrong. And this isn't terribly surprising. When we think about who's to blame, like who's responsible for putting Trump back in the White House, Joe Biden stayed too long. The Democratic Party is utterly out of touch with working class Americans. We always knew that. But the American people chose him. You're right. The American people made the conscious decision, I believe, that I'm going to put this horrible guy back in the White House because he's going to fix some stuff. They made that decision.
Right, and when you see the way that the campaign messaging on Kamala Harris's side, the message is warning about Trump and authoritarianism. He was called a fascist and other things. Those messages were loud and they were clear. And Joe, people just didn't buy it, or they just didn't care.
No, I disagree with you there, my friend. And just technically, Kamala Harris, people who worked with Donald Trump were the first to call him a fascist. And we're talking, just to be fair, we're talking about someone who just 4 years ago tried to overthrow an American election. So this is not a normal cat. And I think Kamala Harris was right to say that he's a threat to democracy. Yeah. And I'll say this. I think the American people are capable of caring about the price of eggs and caring about authoritarianism. The price of eggs was real to them. The case for the threat of authoritarianism, that was never sufficiently made real to them.
Yeah, and I completely get that when it comes to the case for democracy, democratic principles, anti-authoritarianism, these are the basic foundations of thinking and faith in a liberal democracy. Certainly on the liberal side of things, liberal, I mean, with a small L.
Yeah.
But Americans heard that so loudly and so clearly, and chose not to go with those messages. So, I mean, you can't say they were misled. Everyone knows what happened on January the 6th. They heard Trump's warnings to deal with, to bring retribution to his enemies. A lot of them really quite liked that stuff, Joe, didn't they?
I completely agree with you. The American people on Tuesday, to your point, said the character of a candidate doesn't matter at all. Most Americans know he's a pathological liar. Most Americans know he believes he's above the law. Most Americans heard him say he wants to be a dictator. And most Americans, you're right, knew he tried to overthrow an American election. The American people said loud and clear, they don't give a damn about any of that. They don't care how bad he is. They want certain things fixed. You're right. That's the decision they made.
Yeah. And what about identity politics, Joe, as it is called, talking about people identified by various ethnic and other subgroupings in society? It's always been a big part of discourse on the sort of liberal, the centre left of politics. Again, millions of Americans not only don't care about that, they just don't want to hear that stuff. Was that kind of messaging pitched wrongly?
Well, yes, that's always been a problem for the Democratic Party. Kamala Harris, look, I think the one person who doesn't deserve any blame, Kamala Harris, for 3 months thrown into this, ran a pretty damn good campaign. But you're right. That's all. The woke left crap has always been a problem for the Democratic Party. And look, it goes to this problem. Here's the problem, here was the issue. Working class America decided this election, and they had their choice between a demagogue who lies to them about problems, and they knew it, or a party that dismisses them and looks down on them. And the American people decided to pick the ass who lies to them over the party that looks down on them. They made that decision.
Although maybe when it comes to identity politics, just get your thoughts on this contention. When it comes to identity politics, when it comes to these questions of democracy and those principles and how that phrase is seen by people, maybe it could be argued that Donald Trump didn't win the argument. Maybe he had that argument won before this election ever happened. Maybe that's the real America that we're living in now, although some on the liberal side just don't and would rather not see that.
So I think I agree with you. I always felt from the beginning that if Donald Trump is normalized, he has a chance to win. He's an utterly horrible human being who I believe is a traitor to this country. But if you normalize him and he's just another candidate who wants to do something about the border, he's got a chance to win. And I guess I'd argue that maybe all of us didn't do a good enough job of screaming from the mountaintops that this guy is a threat to our democracy, because that clearly didn't connect enough with most voters. I don't regret it, my friend, because I believe it in my bones. To me, there is nothing more important than that. But we lost.
Right. And listen, Joe, you were a Republican. You still are a Republican. Is the Republican Party that you have always believed in the party of Ronald Reagan, the Republicanism which believes in, well, where possible, reaching across the aisle, the Republican Party that believes in engagement with allies, NATO, support for a country like Ukraine facing a threat from Russia, is as it has been faced in the past. Is that Republican Party dead?
Dead. Will never come back. The party that believed America is a shining city on a hill, that party's dead. Trump believes America's a garbage can. The party that believes we are the leader on the world stage, dead. The party that believes in free markets and free trade, dead. That party will never come back. This election made clear that this is now the Trump MAGA party. So people like me who believe in free trade and free markets will never have a home there again.
Where do you go now then? I mean, that was a note of despair. Where do you go now?
It's really hard. I wish I were 30 years old. We have three options. We remain politically homeless and be like a party in exile. We become Democrats and try to move the Democratic Party back to the center. Or we launch a new center-right, free market, free trade, support Ukraine party. They're all difficult choices because we're sort of captive to this two-party system.
Is that an option for you? I mean, you are a political animal. You're not the first one I've heard float the idea of a party on the right of American politics. Are you thinking of getting involved in that? Maybe leading that charge? Is it possible?
Yeah, I'm not going to sit still. I'm still young enough. I'm not going to sit still. I can see Liz Cheney and my friend Adam Kinzinger and a number of us putting together something new. I can see a number of us becoming Democrats. The point is, we're all sort of disparate right now. Now that this election's come and gone and we lost big time, I think all of us in this politically homeless space need to come together and chart our way forward. But I intend to be at the front of that.
Joe Walsh, former congressman, absolutely fascinating to hear you ruminate out loud with us like that.